Okay, this is Chris from Around the Park RV, and what we're going to do is go through a suggested trip itinerary for leaving Denver, heading up to Yellowstone, exploring that region, and also coming down into Utah to explore some of the national parks and monuments in that area, potentially even the Grand Canyon, on a 2-week trip. So let's get started. Okay, one of the first things is if you're arriving late on the afternoon or in the mid-morning and you don't want to get too much of a drive on your first day, one suggestion might be to go to Vedauwoo outside of Laramie, and it's just a short 2-hour drive from where the RV gets picked up. And Vedauwoo is a popular climbing and mountain biking destination. Let's see if that'll give us some information here. But it's a neat spot to pull off and grab a quick night's sleep. There's about 30 campgrounds there, and it's a neat natural outdoor environment. You can see the rock structures and things like that. So interesting things to explore in the region at least, and a nice stopping spot on your way up the road. Okay, and then from there, we're talking about going from Laramie to Granite Hot Springs. There is a campground right there at the Hot Springs location. I've included a link here, and then here's just some images of that area that we can take a look at. This is the picture in the wintertime. It is man-made with a border around, but it's built into the side of this rock face here. And below you can see how the river kind of cascades, or the creek, excuse me, cascades kind of out of that region. So really nice stopping spot. A little ways down from where the hot springs are the Granite Falls that you see here. And depending on the time of the year, they're flowing higher. There's actually a small hand-built each year by locals, a small soaking pool off to this area right here where my mouse is indicating, and it looks like this picture right here. And it can seat about two folks, and the hot water is actually cascading out of the rock wall. Okay, so from the location where you might be camping at Vedauwoo, what you can do is travel along I-80 to Rock Springs, follow 191 north out of Rock Springs here, go past Pinedale and up into this region, the Granite National Forest, and the campground area is right over here. Let's see, I'll get that up. There you go. When you're traveling along this area right here, this is the Wind River Wilderness area. It is a mountain range. It's the largest in the Rocky Mountains, and it's all protected as a wildlife and wilderness area, meaning that there's no mechanical machinery allowed in there, including chainsaws, no bicycles, things along those lines. So it's a neat area. As you're passing along, you'll have about an hour or two of seeing those mountains off to your right before you get into the canyon following the Hoback River, and you take the jaunt up to the Granite Hot Springs pool and where the campground is. From there, we're talking about heading up into Jackson the next day, and right now I have that lined out as a Wednesday arrival. From Granite Hot Springs to Jackson, it is about 1 hour. There's talk of doing the rodeo on Wednesday night, and while you're in the town of Jackson, you can go do some grocery shopping to make sure you have everything you need for going into Yellowstone for the next few days. There's so few amenities inside the park. You could view the ski resort. You can also see the Tetons just outside of town, and I've included some campground suggestions here. Then on Thursday, I'm tentatively suggesting a Grand Teton and Jackson Hole day exclusively. In the area, you have almost everything that you would like to do, from whitewater rafting, scenic rafting, where without whitewater, wildlife viewing, hiking, horseback rides, the whole 9 yards. And then as a suggestion, I would say to camp further north up in this region right here, where it's an area called Flagg Ranch. And it's just north of Grand Teton National Park before you enter into Yellowstone National Park. Another option is that you could actually go ahead and continue all the way to Yellowstone this day if you're trying to keep your itinerary tight. Within Yellowstone, we're talking about coming in from the south entrance, visiting Old Faithful, the Grand Prismatic Hot Spring, as well as some of the other geothermal features in this area. Your campground's over here along the lake, and in that area you're very central to reach a lot of the various areas throughout the national park, which is nice. So on your way up, you'll kind of get to cover the southern region of Yellowstone and Old Faithful. The next day, I was potentially proposing on Saturday that you guys would head to the Grand Canyon of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone River in this region, continue up to Tower Junction, and potentially out to Lamar Valley, where you'll have good wildlife viewing opportunities. You can either leave early in the morning and get up here to try and view the wildlife, or take your time and after viewing the waterfalls, go here and try and see the wildlife in the afternoon when they're feeding again. Then at the end of the evening, you come back down to your campground at Bridge Bay, and your next day would go up this leg towards the west part of Yellowstone, up north to potentially the Boiling River, and then there is also the hot springs in this area, Mammoth Hot Springs, which is just these terraces of hot spring pools that have built up, likely over centuries. Right here around the Wyoming and Montana border is the Boiling River entrance, and let's see if we zoom in, we might be able to get it on here. And like we talked about, there it is. Like we talked about, it's built each year by the park employees, where they pool up the Gardner River and let the Boiling River, this outlet of hot water that pours into the river, it pools up so that way it forms a comfortable soaking temperature where you can swim and experience that area. Now, if that was going to be potentially your last day in the park, I was advocating that after visiting this area, you could continue all the way out to the West Yellowstone entrance versus coming all the way back down to where you're camping at Bridge Bay. And that's an option for you. Then we're talking about on Monday, after exploring Yellowstone, that you would do the zip line in the West Yellowstone entrance area, as well as potentially the Bear and Wildlife Discovery Center. At that point, you could depart that evening of Monday and make some of your drive down towards Salt Lake City, or you could continue to stay in that area depending on what you'd like to do. The drive from West Yellowstone to Salt Lake City is just shy of 5 hours. So it depends on how much time you want to spend there in West Yellowstone, but trying to keep your time dedicated to the best attractions. On the way down, we had talked about Mesa Falls, which is just about 1 hour outside of West Yellowstone. You'll drive through Island Park, which we talked about being a popular fishing destination. And then, as you see, this would be your main path down to Salt Lake City. And this leg here that jaunts off will take you to where Mesa Falls is, around in this area. And it would be worth stopping off and seeing. It's not that far out of the way and doesn't slow you down too much. Another option was Lava Hot Springs, and that's a little bit further down in Idaho. Down here, and that's about 3 hours from West Yellowstone, and then from there you've got a pretty short ride into Salt Lake City if that was something that you wanted to do. Again, just trying to offer up some suggestions of good stopping spots. I'll stop this here. Let's see. So you would arrive in Salt Lake City on the night of Tuesday after making that drive. Another potential is that you would make the drive on Monday evening after doing the zip line in the Bear and Wolf Discovery Center. So you could save a day in essence and arrive sooner. And we talked about in Salt Lake City potentially going to the water park there, Seven Peaks, It's something that some other clients of ours have done in the past and recommended. There's some campgrounds that are nearby basically in the Salt Lake City proper as well that can help you access that. Then we get into an area where we can kind of cut off, like we talked about on the phone. There was interest in going down to the Grand Canyon and also seeing Zion National Park and maybe even Bryce National Park. And then there was also interest in Moab and Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park. But as you can see here, there's this split. The Interstate 15 comes this way, and the highway that goes through Price down to Moab splits this way. And here comes the Colorado River, which kind of divides that section. So there's no easy way to get between the two. But one option is to go down to Zion. And so from Salt Lake City, it's about a 4.5-hour drive. And you can explore and camp in that area down here. Springdale is kind of the entrance to the park. You could drive through the park then and continue down, through Page and come to Zion and go to Grand Canyon National Park on Friday. That's about almost 5 hours from Zion. And then on Saturday, you could, from viewing Grand Canyon National Park, you would be able to get there in the afternoon, tour around that area, maybe do a hike or two, and then as a return, you could follow this path here up to Monument Valley. And Monument Valley is where you see a lot of the spires sticking out of the desert. It's classic in a lot of Western photography as well as Western movies and things along those lines. It is only 3 hours from the Grand Canyon Village to reach the Monument Valley. You could tour around there for an hour or two, and if you wanted, you could continue your drive up north to try and reach Moab sooner, or you could overnight in that area. In this case, I figured that you would potentially overnight, and then on Saturday drive from the Monument Valley to Moab, which is only 3 hours. Then you get in Moab in time to explore Arches National Park, and even Castle Valley is a spectacular scenery. Really, this whole area here has a lot of the red rock cliffs. The Colorado River is flowing through this area, so you get that canyon experience. And then if you came over here to Deadhorse State Park, then you get a wonderful view into Canyonlands National Park without having to take the long drive to actually get into the park itself as an option. And then let's see. In Moab, we also talked about the fact that there's ATV tours. There are 4x4 tours and rentals, things like that. You can go to Arches National Park. There's hiking, and there's also whitewater rafting in that area, and scenic rafting. So you really have a full gambit of activities to do. The other option, and the way I laid this trip itinerary out is if you try to rush through some of the other spaces, or not rush, but if you are willing to wake up, go to an attraction, like here in West Yellowstone, the zip line, and then get on the road and drive some of the way through to Salt Lake City, you can buy yourself some time, so you're able to have a little bit more time down in Grand Canyon, Monument Valley, and Moab. Obviously on Sunday, finish up, and then on Monday, the return from Moab to Arvada, where the RV is returned, is about 5 hours. The other option would be to skip Zion and the Grand Canyon and go more specifically down to Moab right off the bat. You'll be in this area here, spend a full day in Moab, and then from Moab journey down to Mesa Verde, and then from Mesa Verde journey up back to Denver, where the camper will be returned. Or if you wanted to bypass Mesa Verde and just spend more time in Moab, you have that opportunity. And again, just like Yellowstone or Jackson Hole, it's an area that's rich in attractions, so you won't be bored while you're in that area. There's lots to do and there's lots to see. So let's pass some ideas around on what you're thinking, and we can customize this even more for what's going to fit best.